A few days ago, Otts put out this video featuring Cope about different behaviors and actions, things that you could do in Dead by Daylight, and ranking them in kind of a tier list of how toxic, BM, or just in general hurtful to the game they are. And while some of the takes they had were incredibly based, others I thought were absolutely awful. It felt like some of their takes were very distorted from reality because of their 9-10,000 hour streamer perspectives. And even if that wasn't quite a factor, a lot of the rankings were very inconsistent with other actions that I thought felt very similar to each other. I'm just gonna run through them and give some thoughts about it. Timestamps below. Okay, so I don't have the exact site or list that... hold on. I can't have Otts staring at me like that the whole time. Cope already has glasses, so we're just gonna give him a hat. Okay, so I have this list pretty much made, and I cut out all of the individual little things and filled in the background so I can move them around, talk about stuff, and reorder as I see fit. Let me start with a few of them that felt very similar to me but received very different rankings. Anti-fun perks and denying achievements. When talking about anti-fun perks, Otts literally said, "Haha, they gotta know anything. Haha, I have the perk. Haha, they're trying to blind me." Isn't it literally the same thing as denying an achievement? Haha, you can't get the Myers achievement. Haha, I'm in a locker. To me, it seems very, very similar in each of those cases, but one of them got ranked as being fine while the other one was offensive. Denying achievements isn't anywhere near that severe, I think. For anti-fun perks, I would say it depends on the motive though. There are definitely times where certain perks are really good as counterpicks. They're not necessarily toxic or BM or anything like that. But for example, when a killer sees one flashlight in the lobby and they put on Lightborn, they could have put on any other perk to get way more value. Just stare at the freaking wall when you pick up. As Otts put it for denying achievements,
you don't gain anything from it. You just do it out of pettiness so that the other side is tilted. And to me, it's just awful. The perks themselves aren't necessarily an issue, right? They serve as like a cool niche pick sometimes if you want to counter certain things you see in the lobby. But if the intention is, I'm not gonna let them do their thing because fuck them, that's when it's no longer fine. So for me, I would put anti-fun perks in here. And because the rationale between denying achievements and anti-fun perks felt so similar to me from what they were saying in the video, I have to put denying achievements over here as well. It's not nice, but you're not being singled out. Boo fucking who? And one thing I forgot to mention, are there like anti-fun perks on Survivor side? It's got Franklin's and Lightborn, but like I guess what would be anti-fun? Like distortion against like a full aura reading build on Huntress? That is probably fine. Maybe I put this like on the middle line because like in those cases it's very coincidental rather than premeditated. It's very difficult to have anti-fun perks against a killer as a kind of reactionary response. If you have them, great. Let's see. Facecamping, hard tunneling, and full Bleedout. I don't know why full Bleedout got marked as offensive. I guess in the case of you could hook them but you don't, yeah, maybe it's offensive. But by itself, it's not necessarily a crime. Just like full face camping by itself isn't necessarily a crime, hard tunneling itself is not necessarily a crime, like they kind of mentioned in the video. Usually it's the other things that might come along with it. If they're hitting you on hook, they're yes, yes, no, knowing, and they seem to be trying to prove a point by doing that strategy, then yeah, it's pretty messed up. But the act of performing the full bleed out, as annoying as it is, I think it's just not nice. And I don't know how to squeeze this thing in here, but it's not nice. The problem with these is like what Otts said in the video. It's been in the game for so long and is such an unfun strategy overall, but it's not necessarily toxic. I would leave these up to the devs to fix, which they're doing with full bleed out, and now we just need to wait for a fix for the others. To me, these seem like more of a developer issue, that they're in the game for so long, just like Otts said with full face camping, but I think all three of them need to be solved for the game to succeed in the long run. One survivor DCing, make this shit illegal. I've had nights where literally 8 out of 10 games, the first survivor that goes down or gets hooked just DCs. It ruins the fucking game, and it happens way too often. On the other hand, killer or swift DCing. So I actually want to lump this in with a couple others, because to me this seemed very similar to deranking MMR and dodging lobbies. This seemed like one of those very distorted streamer lens things where it's like, oh my god, I'm in queue for 10 minutes and now the full swift DC'd, and then I'm in queue for another 10 minutes. Dude, you're not in queue for 10 minutes every single time. Maybe it happens once a month. Relax. To me, this equates to dodging lobbies that you're not happy with. Someone is trying to curate their DBD experience by disconnecting, dodging lobbies, deranking, whatever. It's not that big of a deal. Should it be addressed? Yeah, probably. But by itself, it's not that much of a crime if the lobbies have been curated so that the people that are doing these things go against baby survivors or baby killers. Those baby players are going to have to level up their skills anyway.
provides them with a chance to play against better people. The only thing is this may expose them to toxic behaviors from the more experienced players that they may not have seen as often at their current hours. But with all that being said, I would put those all in the same category. You know what, that looks kind of cool. I'm going to stack these too. For teabagging, I thought Cope had a really good take actually. It's been in games forever. If you can't deal with teabagging, get over it. It's not usually the worst thing by itself, but it could be the icing on the cake, like Otz was saying. Exploits and techs. So the way I'm interpreting this is something like we're defining a tech as some kind of intended mechanic for unintended effects, whereas exploits are maybe unintended mechanics for unintended effects, like getting stuck in terrain where you can't be picked up by the killer, or using the will make it vault bug. I like that they mentioned, you know, if it happens once or twice, maybe it's an accident and that's okay, but the actual abusers, ban them, fuck them, but it's kind of funny. Techs, while I mostly agree that they are good for the game, in the discussion it seemed like it was centered around survivor techs. What about killer techs? The Legion pallet tech where you vault into a flashlight and then slash when you come out of your power, I think that's super cool. Little things like that are amazing for the game. It adds complexity and depth, and really just brings things to a whole new level. But what about things like Blight's hug tech? I'm not gonna go looking for the source, but like, haven't the devs said that the hug tech is technically a bug? Like, it's not intended to exist at all? It's abusing some miscoded configuration between how the collision detection works. And to me, that just feels like it's an exploit. But the problem is Blight's meta gameplay revolves so much around the hug tech now that it's like a part of him. I'm not really aware of any other killers that have meta-defining exploits. So really, we should just put Blight in the bannable category, and then everything else is fine. Hiding forever. I think this is another case where intentions definitely matter. If the survivors have somehow agreed that they're going to hide for the rest of eternity and hold the game hostage, yeah, that's certainly bannable. But what about cases where they're actually trying to escape, or they just at least don't want to admit defeat? What about when they're hiding during the EGC trying to get on the door, but they just can't seem to get the right window and the timer ends up ticking out? What about when the killer tries to slug for the 4K and someone unbreakables up, and then the survivors are like, oh man, I need to hide until the killer gets bored so I can escape? Those, while being extremely boring, are part of the strategy of the game. And because of that, I might drop this down like half a tier. It's definitely obnoxious though. Stream sniping, I think, is something that the majority of people will probably not understand because we're not all huge DVD streamers that have people clamoring to get into their lobbies. But this did seem a little bit exaggerated. This to me is similar to the camping, tunneling, Bleedout section, where by itself, stream sniping just to get into their lobby is fine. If they're trying to steal the spotlight, if they are coming in to BM through any of these other activities, if they're harassing people, like whatever, then yeah, that's pretty offensive. I'd say that's basically toxic because they're now spreading this to a wider audience. But simply just getting into the lobby is not the worst thing. I do at least sympathize with their gripes a little bit. I would drop it down half a tier just for that, but really I think it's just not nice. Maybe 3/4. I did pretty much agree with chat complaints. However, Twitch ranting, I think, should be bannable. When your pettiness elevates to the level where you're willing to pursue someone off the platform that originated the disagreement, that just seems like too much. The only reason you would ever do that is for harassment. Now, I know there are some streamers out there who will remain unnamed that whenever someone like this comes into their chat, it's like a thing. They act like they've done everything completely right, even though they're clearly playing like a scumbag, but it ends up being content for the streamer. And other than those weird scenarios, I think it should just be bannable on the spot. There's no reason for it. Should it be? I don't know, it's pretty messed up still. Well, we'll leave it inoffensive. But I do think it's pretty serious. Bully squads, I guess, are kind of funny sometimes. They do stupid shit and don't progress the game, sure. However, I would consider it pretty toxic because there are killers that may be offended and do something in the next game as retaliation. It's definitely in the not nice category, but if we're calling this like a toxicity tier list, it should technically be higher up. I'm gonna leave it where it is though. Filters and configs, those are fine. Something Cope was saying about not being able to see on particular maps, that's a developer issue. I think that should just not be the case ever, and it needs to get fixed just like camping, tunneling, bleeding out. I think the last real ones up for debate are going full meta and forced slowdowns. Going full meta is fine, I guess, and this could be on either side. It might kind of cross the borderline over into not nice if it's like, you know, repeated over time, but what ends up happening here is that it's an arms race. Who has the better stuff and who tries to win more? To me, part of what makes something toxic is the likelihood of retaliation, and if that retaliation is like they also just go meta the next game, it's not the worst thing, but it does get incredibly stale like they were saying. 4 slowdown perks though is just fucked. Delays the game forever. They could just take lethality perks instead, right? It's like the bleeding people out, right? It just takes so long and you could have hooked them. Why don't you just take a different perk? But like, sure, I guess it's technically like a valid strategy. As much as it riles me up, raises my temper, I'm still gonna put it in that not nice category, because by itself it's not necessarily bad, but I swear to God, the killers that do this on a regular basis, they are doing a lot of these other toxic activities. And even if it's not intended to be BM, this puts survivors on such high alert that anything may be misconstrued as that. Like, oh, there was a little bit of desync trying to find the survivor on the floor to pick them up. That looked like a no-no. Fuck this guy, I'm teabagging the shit out of him later. You know what I mean? And then I guess cheating and DDoSing, I think we're pretty much in agreement there. That's just wrong. At the very end of the video, Otz was like, hey, did we miss anything, Cope? Oh no, I think that's pretty good. I think there were a lot of things missing on here. For example, I mentioned it just now, like no-knowing/nodding as the killer. It can be kind of funny for sure, but like, what's the intention behind it? It's all sort of body language. Same thing on the survivor side, whatever they do, it's like teabagging, right? Whether they're actually doing like a point or a wave emote or teabagging or doing clicky clicky with a flashlight, it does kind of all come down to the intention. And so all of those things, I would probably throw them into fine, just like I would put 3 gens into not nice. It's just fucking lame. It's just a part of the game, and especially right now, that's kind of the meta with the perks that are out, but for me is already incredibly stale. And slugging for the 4 kill that I mentioned before, honestly, that's just offensive. That's a waste of time. That's like setting up the killer to have an alibi about being mad, like, oh my god, you were hiding, just accept your defeat and die. It goes both ways, homie. The survivor doesn't want to die, you want to kill them, you're both being stubborn as fuck. I think it's a little bit less severe than hiding forever because you can't technically stall the game out forever that way. It's just incredibly boring. And so I'm gonna put the slug right here. I think those are pretty much all the notes I had. My viewpoint is probably distorted by being a 95% survivor main, and just like I pointed out a bunch of behaviors that these guys missed in their video, I probably missed even a few more. The list goes on. Anyway, making this list itself is rather inconsequential. It's just fun to talk about player psychology, I guess. Thanks for listening, see you on the next one.